I will tell you, and I'll tell you why in a second, because you have to do a bunch of BS. And I thought I will
Mm,
save it, and then you can stream later to Instagram. So it'll be on Instagram later.
fair enough. Well, hey, friends on all the different platforms. Welcome to another episode of Quiqui, International, Intergenerational Black Femme Conversations. Today, we are talking about community, defining it, talking about our experience of it, and talking about our dreams of what we want for community in the future. Um, do you want to do a little intro, young
Yeah.
Anusha?
Hello, my name is Anusha. I'm a black person with a white t-shirt and white fluffy cufflinks. I've got twists in my hair. I call myself a singer, vlogger, shit talker, and however I'm feeling today. And yeah, I am a singer and a musician overall, and I also vlog about my experience within the music industry and the social critique around it. And that is me. I'm here, ready, and I'm excited to talk to you today. And yeah, that is me.
Nice. YouTube channel Anusha LDN. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, Anusha LDN on everything. I was gonna let you intro them, go back to it, but yeah, and Anusha LDN on everything. I always say to people, if you just put Anusha into Google, you will find me because there are very few Black Anushas. So ANUSHA, just put it somewhere, you will find me there. But Anusha LDN, if you want to be specific about it. Yeah, that's me.
Nice. I am the lady, Ms. Vagina Jenkins. Pronouns they, them, we, when I want to talk about the fullness of my experience and how my ancestors are with me. I am a light skinned, monoracial, a black femme sitting in my wrought iron bed. There's a white curtain behind me. I'm wearing a little white strappy ting and a little white head wrap because today's theme, in terms of the costuming choices that we made, is cozy. Do we look appropriately cozy?
Please let us know in the chat. Like, we'll ask them
Oh,
before or after you watch this. Like, let
and
us
I was just going to say, and my YouTube channel is at Vagina Jenkins. You're probably watching me on it right now, but you might be watching me on Facebook. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, I cut you off. Please, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say let us know in the chat if we look cozy enough or if we could be cozier.
I like these particularly, the sensory experience of coziness.
Yes, these are
I like
so
that.
fluffy. I've literally just I saw these on Vinted and I basically just said fluffy. I'm getting it. I didn't no reason for me to get them. I just thought get it because it's literally summer. Oh, there's no reason for me to be wearing fluffy cufflinks, but here we are. Like here we
Are
fucking
you
are.
really texturally motivated?
Depends. I think I like things on me, if that makes any sense. Like even when it comes to like what is it called? Slime? Like I like just texture, but I don't like just feeling things. I like to be like completely wrapped up in things. Like if you could put me
Mm-hmm,
in
mm-hmm.
a slime bath, I would, or if you put me in like a jelly bath, I'd be itchy, but I would absolutely do it. Yeah, I like to be completely like covered in things. And yeah, I have a lot of fluffy things, like fluffy coats, because I just like the feeling of fluffness. That's me.
Mm, loves
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Loves it. Appreciates all the sensory experiences. So community wise, we thought that we might define it first for you.
Mhm.
And this is not an absolute definition, by the way. This is our definition of like what we think community feels like to us.
Mm.
So yeah, don't get it twisted. But yeah, community. Shall I? Do you?
Yeah, you,
Well,
you start. You start. You
differ?
start. Cheerio,
Well, I will.
let's go.
Well, I will share that like we chose this conversation or this theme was inspired by the fact that we are working on a group of folks that gather together to like support each other through their building of their YouTube channels, which, by the way, if that's something that you want to be a part of, please hit us up, either one of us in the comments. Let us know about how you would like to cultivate community here on YouTube. But yeah, it has been a big thing that has been coming up in those conversations. And so we thought to make it the theme of this conversation as well. Um, and yeah, when I think about community, I think about shared experiences.
Mhm.
I feel like if we were to look it up on like the dictionary or something like that, that community would show up as like a geographical situation.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like some of my experiences have been geographical, but I feel like we're talking more about shared lived experiences.
Mm.
For me, I'll
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Um,
100.
yeah.
I hear.
Yeah.
I hear. I mean, for me, I think a lot of it comes down to like attitudes and like what your moral compass is like. Because I would
Mm,
say I'm an Aquarius, so let's start there. And have a lot of Aquarian issues. That wasn't the word I wanted to use, but maybe it was a Freudian slip. I have a lot of Aquarian stuff in my chart, but for me, like I always like start with like your morals. I don't mean like, oh, civilized and blah blah blah. No, it's like what you believe in and the things that you want to achieve out of life. Like what are your interests? What do you think, you know, how do you support people? How do you care for people? Like it's that
mm,
sort of morality for me kind of brings me in community with people because especially mind you, I grew up with the internet and so for me, and also I grew up on the internet. I also grew up in a very small town. You can go to the first episode. I could break down the whole of England in that one. Um, Growing up in a small town, but also having access to the internet, the idea of community, it was very like, yeah, sure, community, people who are around me, but also community, people who I was sort of on the internet with and who shared the same sort of moral compass. And also to add on to that, that kind of also started, God rest his soul, with Trevor Martin and sort of like the first iteration of Black Lives Matter. I remember being online and you would it was the first time in probably my life where uh, I was meeting people who had the same moral compass as me and people who wanted the same outcome in
mm,
life as me. The liberation of black people and all the oppressed people, etc. Um, and I think I've gotten older, that's never wavered. But that has always been sort of those sort of people who have that idea in their hearts. Those are the people I connect with, and those are the people who I would consider to be in community with. And that's the
yeah.
idea of community for me. It's like shared interests, shared morals, shared beliefs, and obviously, things can kind of tether depending, but the the core at the core of it, that's where it is for me, 100%. Yeah,
I hear you. Shared morals, values,
yeah,
alignment. Yeah, I like that. And then, okay, so like if that's how you're defining it,
hmm
what communities do you belong to? Like
yeah.
uh how do you, yeah,
Well,
where, what values, what communities?
I guess the first one like that I always go to is the like COVID safe community. Some people call it anti-COVID, some people call it white people call it COVID conscious, and I leave those people over there. But like when it comes to COVID and trying to protect ourselves from COVID, that's like the first. That's kind of the first place I go to sometimes because I think it's the easiest to explain. It's people who love and want to protect each other from infection, regardless of what the to be honest, it's regardless of what the infection is. Really, I say it's like anti-COVID, COVID safe, but it really is just like those people who have disability justice at their core, disability liberation at their core, and those
Yeah.
people are my people. Um, and I feel I've talked about this before, but I'll kind of do a TLDR. Um, is that like I've grown up with disability all my life, but I think when the pandemic started, it was like, okay, this is like I had to hone in a lot of the ideas that probably some people take years to kind of sit with. I was like, well,
Yeah.
I've got a couple of weeks, so let's go. So I had to really think about how what it is to protect the most marginalized from sickness, what it is to protect, to make things accessible for as many people as possible. So that's probably one. Another's obviously the queer community, and that informs my art and the art that I engage with. I always think about queerness equates to no boundaries, regardless if it's like, you know,
Ooh.
no gender, like no, like when it comes to sexuality, anything like that, just no boundaries whatsoever. That's what where I picture queerness. And I've been really sitting with this because I'm hint hint nudge nudge. I've got a new single coming out July 4th, and I'm making a music video for it. And it's interesting because whenever I go to music videos, I always go to queer artists. That's the thing. Or wherever I look at visuals, I always go to queer artists. Or I always try to go to queer artists. Like that's my first forefront because the art that inspires me is just queer. Like the art that like gives me joy is just queerness, and uh, that's beautiful to me. And I'm like, wow, look at how art can be so expansive and so much fun and so almost unconventional. I don't think unconventional. That's not a word. Unconventional when it comes to when it comes to sort of the building blocks and like the core of it. It's just like, well, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want, and you're gonna like it, and that actually is amazing to me. So I think those are two communities that really stay close to my heart, and obviously Black people. But you know, like I like Black people. Black people are fun. I think I love the contradictions of Black people across the world. Like I like how I can talk to you in America, um, as you can tell me a Black experience, and I'm like, I have a similar experience, but in British, and that's fun to me. Like or I could look at someone, where's our family from? Senegal. Like I won't get into the history of that, but I look like a lot of people from Senegal, and that's so cool to me because the short version is because I'm from Anguilla and slave trade, they came from Senegal down. If you Google Senegal, you can find people that look like me, and that's so much fun. Like because I don't find many people that look like me in Britain, and it's lovely. So
Mm.
I love the Black experience. I love Blackness, and I love Black people.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. You said if community is values, and you talked about COVID safe community and that value of keeping each other safe. Queerness as a community, the value is no boundaries, you said.
Yeah.
Blackness as a community, what is the shared value?
Ooh, how do I? That's interesting because I could be here all day. Um, I
I
think
just was
the
curious if
Blackness.
one.
I no, I think it's interesting because I would dare I say anti-blackness. I'm like, yo, we've all experienced some sort of anti-blackness. Let's go. So like, and that what is the theory that people always quote and that like it always leaves my brain? It's the idea of not being human. What is that theory? Oh, my brain is not picking up that thought. But there's a theory, and I cannot think of it. But it's the idea of like the Black person by Sylvia Winter. She kind of also talks about it. The idea of like the Black person is not considered human within society. Like we're always considered the slave, or we're always considered the other. So like you
Mm-hmm.
have like, you know, the human, the people who deserve like civility and whatever, all that kind of professional bullshit, and then you have the non-human, the Jezebel, the blah blah blah, the whatever. And I
Yeah.
always I cannot think of the theory right now because I think that every time people talk about it online, you know how people like to intellectualize everything, and sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I'm confused. I don't know what you mean.
But I do hear you talking about a shared value of fighting white supremacy, though.
And fighting white supremacy, and like also just like I don't even say struggle, but like there is a way that we always will find joy in something, or we will find there is a sort of search for liberation with, I wouldn't say all Black people because all skin folk ain't kin folk. Let's start there. Um but there's a sort of like I can watch a movie like The Prince of Egypt there's problems with that movie because white people, and it's a little bit minstrelsy. But the story of the Prince of Egypt, like, I am not a religious person, but that film will always make me cry because at the end they like are free of slavery and they're on some new thing and whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's not good for you. And it's like it hits you in the feels because that's what we're all fighting. Well, that's what we should all be fighting for. And if you know the myth,
Liberation maybe as a shared
liberation.
value.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that feeling of liberation, and whether it's like that small thing, like you watch, like I can watch, like I follow. It's not really liberation, but it kind of is. Like I follow this black people with pets account. And
Mhm.
this just black people that has this is black girl that has a rabbit. I think she named her like Jeremiah or something. Like she named it something really funny. And I was watching it and it was like just seeing this black person in just have a little bit of joy and just kind of go that extra mile. I'm like, and you always it for me it always hits me in the feels. Um
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think liberation, anti-blackness. I feel like that's a little bit more complicated when it comes to the black community because I will say there are subsections of it because like am I in community with Al Sharpton? No. Like, am I in community with Eric Adams? Hell no. Like
Yeah.
not a bit of me. But what about you? Like, would you say it's kind of roughly the same, or are there any things that I'm missing that maybe you're in a community with, or people you're in community
Oh
with?
yeah. I mean, similar communities, but because my definition of community is so experiential,
Hmm.
different underlying through lines. So yeah, if I'm defining community as a sense of shared experiences, and I think about what communities I belong to, I think first and foremost about Black Southern communities.
Mm,
And I think about that experience of literally growing up. And it really makes me teary eyed every time, but also Pisces realness. Um,
mm,
that experience of growing up and you can physically touch something that your ancestors built. Literally, you can't walk a block, you can't see a
mm,
thing, experience an institution without knowing that, like, my people literally built this.
mm,
um, and that is both a beautiful and a frustrating experience. And so to be Black, and particularly Black from the South, you get a sense of like how my people literally built this country, and it brings out a unique sense of patriotism that I don't see people talking about quite often because fuck this country, but also we built this shit.
yeah,
Um,
it's yeah. I see that. I see that 100%. Yeah.
And so yeah, that is a community that I hold near and dear to my heart, and maybe that's maybe my first experience of community. I definitely hold queer community as a huge part of like who I am and my experience. And when
Mm,
I'm thinking about queering, uh, gosh, I thought it was really interesting that you said no boundaries because I think about queerness as the kind of boundaries that allow us to be expansive, and I think we're on the same page in terms of
yeah. Wedding.
expansiveness.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but when I think about queerness and dreaming of that another world that's supposedly possible, I think about like maybe subversion is the first thing
Mm,
that comes to mind, and understanding the existing structures,
mm,
and the existing rules and boundaries and how we can subvert them.
yeah.
And when I think about queer experiences, I think about that Bell Hooks quote, which I wish I had memorized, but I don't. But or they said something along the lines of like finding oneself at odds with everything that surrounds you, and
Mm,
finding and fighting for a place within it all.
mm,
And that is my experience of queerness.
mm,
And so, yeah, I feel like that is a community that I feel like I am solidly situated within in terms of like communal experiences.
mm,
And I think disability community,
mm,
of which COVID is definitely a subset. Um, and when I think about disabled experiences, not to be melodramatic, but I feel like the first thing comes to mind is the feeling of the not the feeling, the experience of the
Mm.
deepest marginalization. Not that it's an
No,
oppression Olympics, but like,
I think there's Imani Crutches with Spice,
mhm,
or Crutches and Spice, sorry, mentioned says that like disability infiltrates everything
yeah,
in life. Whereas like you have blackness, but then like I could go
mhm,
into a whole tangent on how disabled black people uh, are treated within blackness and black
yeah,
community. Same with queerness. Like we've talked at length about how queer people are kind of disposed of within queer communities and how the idea of normal is really perpetuated. And I think it does like ableism like penetrates everything. And I
yes.
think I completely agree with you on that. Like I think um being aware of it, like there are still times I'll be like mopping the floor and be like, whoa, that was an ableist experience. Damn, okay, carry on. Like it really gets into everything. And there are even things that like I don't even think of until later. And I'm like, whoa, that
Would
was such a
you?
yeah.
I wondered if in this moment, and also feel free to say no, thank you, safe word. Um, but I wondered if you would like to share any of your thoughts or ideate live about this new life that you're imagining for yourself, where you make your life more accessible.
I think the main thing about that is putting myself, like prioritizing myself, because I think, elder daughter syndrome, like I'm very used to sort of putting other people's feelings before mine. That's a huge thing for me. Like I will sit there and be like, oh yeah, I'll squash my feelings down or whatever. And that can be in any situation. But when you prioritize yourself, you're not like discarding others, but you're saying, I can't show up for you if I'm not feeling great. So I have to make sure I'm feeling good before I do, and like before I do anything, or even like in the midst of doing things, I'm like, I need to make sure I'm fine before I even consider you, because otherwise everything's gonna fall apart. And like this week, for example, I have sort of been offline. I've been really, and that's not an Anusha thing. I'm always aware. I'm always saying, kind of understanding of everything. And I just said, I can't do it this week. I don't have the bandwidth to sort of
Yeah,
talk to people online. I didn't ghost anybody, but I definitely just sort of shut it down a tad. And that feeling of just kind of having moments to myself, like I've got myself a new console and I've also brought myself games, and having those breaks and pacing and things like that, like making sure that I'm not completely burnt out by work. Not setting high standards for myself, because sometimes I go not overboard, but sometimes I'm like, I want to come present myself in the best way possible. And then, but sometimes I will kind of wreck my self care in order to like to be present. I might sometimes just
yeah,
come up early. Like my auntie always says, just show up. Showing up is the thing. You don't have to do all this extra hoo ha palaver to kind of get to a certain place. Showing up and doing the thing is enough. That's another, like making sure
yeah,
that I'm just doing it and not sort of pressuring myself to be like that. Is that sort of thing like, oh, I need to be the best, or I need to do. Who says you have to? Sometimes just show up and do the thing. Um,
mhm.
show up and do the thing,
Yeah. I
because
didn't.
yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I felt in this moment, I just feel like it's so connected, especially for Black folks. I feel especially for Black femmed folks, uh,
Mm-hmm.
that discussions of community talk about the importance of prioritizing and caring for oneself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I think, particularly for Black and femmed folks, that we are going to show up for community. And I think it's maybe, it could be something that's been like internalized from as an external value. Maybe it's just our innate way of being. For whatever reason, we are going to show up. And I also need us to have conversations about how we show up with a full cup to pour from.
Mhm.
And so I think the any conversation about community from Black and femmed people really needs to have a portion that talks about how we pour into and care for and prioritize ourselves. Yeah.
100%. I think because especially the way that sometimes community can kind of I can't think of pronounce the word, but there's like a hierarchy when it comes to who gets the most care and who doesn't. And when you bring in
Yes.
queerness, when you bring in like anti-fatness, and then you bring in like colorism, which I guess we all kind of in this space we all kind of experience one or the other. And it's that sort of thing where it's like sometimes in community that's not offered to you, or that's not offered. Like I kind of think, and this is me putting on my little 15-year-old moody hat on. Sometimes I'll sit there and think, huh, if I was, like if I had a bit of more desirable appearance, I could have a lot of help with this. Do you know what I mean? Like I could have a lot of help with things like moving or things like art creation, and I don't, and that's okay. But then I put on my adult hat on, and I'm like, you know what? In order for me to complete this task or whatever I'm doing, I need to take care of myself, because realistically, someone's not going to come and save me all the time, and
Ooh.
that's and
Ooh.
and I will, and I think my thing about that is two things. One, find people who will save you, because that's one thing. I stopped looking to people who are desirable to be in your community, because at the end of the day, like, what does Monique say? Skinny people are bitches or something like that. I don't know what she says, but it makes me giggle because it's very true. But like the sort of the that I kind of let go of the sort of rainbow happy clouds idea of community, and find the people that will, come and help if they have the capacity to. But also sometimes you have to kind of look after yourself. Like it's kind of, they
Hmm.
can kind of both can coexist in a way. And if look after yourself is, what, stuff this, I'm going to sleep, that's enough. Stuff this,
Yeah.
I'm going to bed. Like, and that's like that is my mantra this week. Like, okay, I can't. I've got to look after myself. I've got to save myself. Go to bed. Like playing games until I get frustrated, and then going to bed. Like that's my thing.
I always hated that RuPaul quote about
Yeah,
how you
yeah,
how you gonna love somebody else when you can't love yourself. I think that as it applies to romantic love, that is the most foolish,
but
idiotic
yeah,
thing that I've
yeah,
ever heard in my life. But
absolutely.
if we were
Yeah,
to apply it to like the principle of care, both
yeah,
community care and self-care, yeah, how are you going to care for other people when you have not cared for yourself? Walking around like an
yeah,
angry ass, hungry, non-slept, rested
yeah,
martyr,
yeah,
being all
yeah.
goddamn angry.
Like, how do you, or those kind of people, um, who always have the big words and always are like, yes, I've been attacked, and I'm gonna sue you for defamation. I'm like, my guy, like, sometimes chill, sometimes chill. And it's interesting because with those types of people, you could always see, um, you can always see that they don't have community in mind and in heart, because like those, like the people who kind of come into a space with the sort of that martyrdom of like, I'm going to save you because I care for, the marginalized people, but in
Yes.
my way. um that will never, it never works, and it always messes up.
Yes. It's
Every,
giving very much charity. It's giving very much charity slash mission work slash
yeah,
martyrdom. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Sean King, like,
Oh, stop.
literally.
I could never remember that fool's name. I be calling him Sean White all day. Like, Sean
Ah,
is white, but his name
I mean,
is King.
it makes sense. Like, I mean, I think what that year when everyone was calling him like Talcum X, that was the best. That was the best. I was like, that was my favorite year of life, because I'm like, I have never known a description so accurate in my life.
I
Um,
mean, I
look,
mean,
but it's like that's the perfect model of someone who acts like, who uses the word community, and it really has become a business buzzword. Um, of
mm,
like trying to cultivate community. Like I was listening to a podcast, and this comedian said it perfectly. He was like, there could be a community of like bouncy castles, And it's like, we're trying to cultivate a community of bouncy castles. Like, that has definitely been a word. And if I was to put my little sociology hat on, it's very intended and sort of like purposeful. They're doing it for a reason. But
Manipulative, yeah.
yeah, there's a reason why they're doing it. And I think the state of the world we're in, 100%, they're doing it on purpose. But
Because
it's
people are craving connection.
yeah, well, I think people are still traumatized from the start of the pandemic, which is still going on. But like that start of the pandemic, the way it was handled was so traumatic, and the world said, "Go back to normal, get on with it, everything's fine." And it's like,
Right.
how do you basically like get over, like work through your trauma that you're trying to ignore? And so people are craving community, but I'm like, the world has changed. And once you acknowledge that and you accept that and you protect people from that, then maybe you can work through it and then you can do other stuff through it. But until you do that, like that sort of craving that people want, like whether it is like community, interaction, care, whatever, you're not gonna get in the most fulfilling way, no matter how you do. Um
Yes.
uh
I see on the
oh,
comments somebody saying, well, hi, Buana, welcome. We're talking about community, and then, yeah, they're asking you about where you're from in the UK, if that is something that you would like to share.
I am from, I would say like the south of England. So north, if you know England, it's divided like north and south, but it's very opposite the way America is divided. Like south is considered country and north is considered city. It's like the completely opposite. North is considered country, and then south is very city, people, hustle bustle. And I'm in London at the moment. I'm in South London, and I'm from what you call it, Berkshire, the Shires. But yeah, that's what I'm from.
Speaking of
But
geographic experiences of community.
yes, I mean it's interesting because like even within that, because there is so much segregation in those areas. Because I always have this conversation with my mum, like it's interesting that like there is within sort of those segregations, you are still able to find community quite easily there, and it's quite nice. Because you have the rich people over there. You're like, oh, stuff you colonizers, fucks, whatever. And then you find other people. You're like the most random person, and you'll be like, oh, I'm gonna be your friend now. And then they can be like your bestest friend, and like with your like people that you've grown up with. You're like, how the hell did that happen? Like you look back at it, but it's really nice.
I
Like
love that.
it's really like, oh, there's someone. I won't go into the whole shtick of it, but I always consider myself to have like 5 mums at home. Like I've got to check in with this mum, and I've got to check in with that mum, I've got to check in with this mum, because I was brought up with so many different people, like, and
Aw, I love
it's
that.
it's quite sweet, and like even like, and I think because everybody else is so rich, when you grow up poor in a rich area, like the poor people, you just give things to each other. You're just like, yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
Like you don't even think like, oh, you go to went to school in Wolverhampton, Nottingham. So I'm just curious. Oh, yeah, I again
Community
because
connection.
I have privileged brain of, because again I grew up in Windsor, so anything past Reading, my brain just kind of, that's a blur. It becomes Manchester, Birmingham, all in like one. but
Fair enough.
but like no, that's just I don't know geography. But when you were growing up, you like, I know that like when my mum moved house, my neighbour just gave her a lawnmower. Like, oh,
Oh,
you're new, here you go, here's a lawnmower. And
I
like
love
I know
it.
that when I first went to school, like you had to travel like by horse fucking back to get to school, because there were like 3 schools in the area. And I remember I got so lost. And my neighbor, who's called Trudy, love her down. And basically, she just saw me. She was like, "You don't know what you're doing." Okay, paid for my train fare. It would buy me breakfast every morning. Paid for my bus fare. Would give me money for lunch. Would tell her daughters, bring Anisha back home, and she would cook me dinner. And like I just became her daughter, like her proxy daughter. And like it's a lovely feeling of being in community with other poor. That's another thing I didn't mention. Being in community with poor folks. That's kind of what I wanted to get
Eh,
to. I think,
Yeah, and then that shared value of like we're in this together. I feel
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping up, would you think about like in terms of like dreaming forward? We said we wanted to devote some of the time to dreaming forward. Could you say for whatever community you want to focus on, three
Mm.
words about what you want as you are dreaming forward for those communities?
Oh, I think my main thing, whenever it comes on dreaming and I'm thinking like dreaming and thinking and cultivating and imagining, I think my main thing is just like sort of thinking outside the box. I know that sounds really vague, but the sort of like the way that my life has kind of worked out well is that when people do things that are a little bit outside the box, where it might be like, you know what, I have time. I'm going to do something really peculiar, and I hope it works. You know, where it's and sometimes it doesn't always work, but I think that's where community works best. When you work outside of parameters, you work outside of confines. Um, and you just say, you know, I'm just gonna do something really strange. I hope it helps. You know, I remember like an example would be like when it comes to. I mean, this is always something I've always thought of is that like when it comes to people, and you know, people have like parents' houses or something, or like they live in their parents' house for years. Maybe they want to move on with a boyfriend or something. Why not just give someone else your house? Like, here you go, here's a house.
Hmm.
There you go. You know what I mean? And like that's life changing for someone, and that's nothing for you because you're not going to do anything with that house. Like, let go of the idea of greed and whatever. Just give someone else your house. You know, we used to
Yeah.
like going back to talking about home. Um, you know, like mum's rent when she used to live in a hostel, and mum's rent was like £5 a month, if that, and that's if you could pay it. And it was just like, oh, you know, things like that. Like I wish for a world where we could just give each other resources and it wasn't a thing of how can I exploit you for this, how can I just want to give you things. Like that's how
I
I grew
feel
up.
that.
Like I will still give people things. People look at me kind of funny. They're like, well, why are you giving me this thing for free? I'm like, yeah, here you go, here's a thing. Here's some, or even if it's time or support or education, just giving things out to people. And I think that's where community for me works best, where you sort of think outside the box, you do something a little bit peculiar that maybe not that's not like normal in society. Um, but then you just kind of you give your resources, you just support people the best way you can. That's my idea of communities. I think that's where it works best for me. And what about you? What
Mhm.
do you see community as, or what do you want to live? What world do you want
Uh,
to live?
Dreaming forward, a couple of words. For Black folks, I want us to have hmm, a sense of a priority on liberation rather than a
Mm,
priority on assimilation. I want us to prioritize and understand our greatness
mm,
instead of internalizing our marginalizations.
yeah.
For queer people, I want us to understand the power of queerness and how, like
Mm,
you were just talking about, doing things differently and queering models across the board is a
mm-hmm.
superpower. And for
Yeah.
disabled people, I want us to be valued for our objective experiences and our objective views that we've been sitting on the margins. We have a
Yeah.
perspective that is unique and powerful, and I want that perspective to be honored.
Yeah. I love
Go
that.
show.
I love that.
And
Especially
I think that we can have all of it.
yeah,
I
I
do.
think I absolutely and I think one thing I want to leave on is that the future can be now. Um in those little things that you do every day. Like someone uh I really appreciate called T. You've not seen it in a while. I might need to check up on them. Um they say abolition and all these kind of ideas we have can start now. They can be the little things you do every day. Like if abolition is, well, rather than charge you for this thing, here it is for free. That's in a way that's abolition. You know, like I
Mhm.
always use the story of my mum used to accidentally feed everybody on the estate. And she didn't mean to do it but she would just be like, "Well, I have free food. Here is food." She got annoyed after a while because people would literally be through the window and start just taking food from her. But that's kids for you. Like that's abolition in a way. Like you're feeding your community, you're protecting your community, you're um, putting, you're caring for it. Like you can start that now. It's not like this kind of concept that only can happen in a certain set of circumstances. It can happen
Yeah,
right now, and I think that's the
I
beauty
feel
of
that.
community and care is that you can just do it right now. Start now.
I feel it.
Yeah.
Ah, that is a beautiful note and a sentiment to end on, friend. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess as to close out, can we both share again the ways in which, speaking of community and finding support within, what are the ways that people can support you and find you?
Well, people can find me everywhere. I'm mostly on Instagram, but you can find me everywhere on Anusha, ANUSHALDN, on all platforms. You can join my Patreon, but it may not be there no longer because I'm going to start a coffee soon. So keep, come to my social media and you'll understand what's going on there. I also have a website which is anushamusic.com. But really, I'm a singer, and I'm on all streaming platforms. And if you didn't know, um, streaming platforms have decided to cut our payouts. So once if you got like 1,000 streams over 2 months, you would get like a certain amount of money, and now you have to get 1,000 streams within a 1 month. Otherwise, they just cut everything and take everything away. So I am on Bandcamp because I do believe in supporting the arts. So you can find me at Anisha Music .bandcamp.com, and yeah, just find me there. No, it's Anusha.bandcamp .bandcamp.com. The Bandcamp, I'm going to put it in the chat. It's Bandcamp URLs are really strange. But yeah, like I said, just put Anusha and you'll find me. Uh, please support the arts. I do believe in supporting DIY indie like queer artists. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's all of my stuff in a nutshell. And what about you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, and Buy Me a Coffee.
Yeah.
All of those things are Vagina Jenkins. And yeah, the best ways there, or the ways that I would prefer to be supported, would be via subscriptions to my Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee blogs, both Vagina Jenkins. Or if you want to support for the free 99, I really want people to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that I can get to that 1,000 subscriber monetization mark and start earning ad revenue. So
Mm,
yeah, for free on YouTube, subscribe to Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. And that's all I have to say about that. Mm.
yeah.
Thank you all for stopping by and being such a good audience. And thank you to my co conspirator.
Yes. Partner in crime. That's why I'm here. You know. No, thank you for always showing up, and it's lovely. I always feel relaxed when I talk to you, and that's a nice feeling to have. Just de-stress, have fun. I love that feeling.
Community. All
Yes.
right, friends, we will talk to you another time
See you
and
later.
take good care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.